It all started on an ordinary Tuesday morning. Ethan Clark was mopping the shiny marble floors of a military training facility. To most people, he was just the janitor, quiet, humble, always keeping his head down. What no one really knew was that Ethan was also a single father, raising his little daughter, Lily, on his own after his wife had passed away 2 years earlier. He had traded in his dreams, his ambitions, his entire life, just to make sure Lily would never feel like she was missing something. He worked long hours, did night shifts when needed, and often ate leftovers so she could have fresh meals. He told everyone he was fine. But deep down, Ethan carried silent battles, exhaustion, grief, and the constant pressure of being enough for his daughter. That morning, while wiping sweat from his brow and wringing out the mop, Ethan overheard laughter and chatter from the training hall nearby. A group of 10 female commandos, the toughest of the tough, trained for combat, fearless in every way, were finishing up their drills. They were strong, confident, and carried themselves with the pride of elite warriors. One of them spotted Ethan through the glass door and nudged her friends. "Hey, look! The janitor's been watching us." They laughed, not cruelly, but in the playful way soldiers often teased outsiders. Another commando grinned and said, "Maybe we should invite him in. Who knows, maybe he's tougher than he looks." At first, Ethan shook his head and kept mopping, embarrassed. But the laughter grew louder, and soon one of the commanders came out. "You there," she said, half smiling. "Want to join us for a little spar? Nothing serious. Just for fun." The other commandos chuckled. Some crossed their arms, curious to see what the quiet janitor would do. To them, it was just harmless entertainment. They sparred with each other every day. Why not test this ordinary man who barely said a word? Ethan wanted to refuse. He had no business stepping into that arena. But then he thought of Lily. Just last night she had asked, "Daddy, are you strong? Stronger than superheroes?" He had smiled and nodded, even though inside he wasn't sure he believed it himself. Maybe, he thought, maybe this is a chance to remind myself who I am. He put the mop aside, wiped his hands on his faded work pants, and quietly said, "All right. I'll spar." The room fell silent for a moment. No one had expected him to actually agree. They gave him a set of practice gloves and led him to the mat. The female commandos circled around, cheering and laughing. But as Ethan stood there, his calm eyes and steady breathing caught them off guard. The first commando stepped forward, confident and light on her feet. She threw a quick jab, testing him. To everyone's shock, Ethan slipped to the side effortlessly, his movement sharp and efficient, like he had done it 1,000 times before. Another came at him with a kick, but Ethan blocked it with perfect timing, redirecting her energy without hurting her. The laughter in the room began to fade, replaced by wide-eyed stares. One after another, the commandos tried to get the better of him. But Ethan wasn't attacking, he was defending, moving with precision, controlling the spar without arrogance. His years of martial arts training from a past life, something he never bragged about, had returned like muscle memory. Within minutes, 10 elite commandos found themselves sitting on the mat, breathing heavily, staring up at the janitor who had never once raised his voice. Silence filled the hall. Then, slowly, applause began. Not mockery, not teasing, but respect. Word of what happened spread quickly through the facility. Soldiers whispered, "Did you hear about the janitor? He took on 10 commandos at once." But for Ethan, it wasn't about impressing anyone. That evening, when he picked up Lily from school, she ran into his arms and asked, "Daddy, are you really as strong as superheroes?" He smiled and kissed her forehead. "Maybe stronger. But the real strength, Lily, is in being kind." Of course, life didn't suddenly get easy after that. Ethan still faced challenges. Balancing long work hours with raising his daughter. Battling loneliness when he saw families together. Fighting the quiet doubts that whispered, "You're not enough." But something had changed. The commandos who once laughed at him now greeted him with respect. Some even came to him for advice on technique, humility, and discipline. For the first time in years, Ethan felt seen not just as a janitor, but as a man of worth. And slowly, opportunities began to open. One of the commanders recommended him as a part-time instructor for basic defense training. Another offered to help with Lily's schooling. The challenges didn't vanish, but he no longer faced them alone. Months later, during a special training exhibition, Ethan was invited to demonstrate alongside the very same 10 commandos. Before a hall filled with officers, cadets, and even young students, he stepped onto the mat. This time, there was no laughter. Only respect. The spar began to coordinated, fluid, almost like a dance. And when it ended, the crowd stood to their feet, cheering not just for skill, but for the message behind it. That strength isn't about titles, uniforms, or appearances. That even the quietest person may carry hidden battles and hidden greatness. That kindness, humility, and perseverance can turn the overlooked into the unforgettable. After the demonstration, Ethan held Lily's hand tightly as they walked home. She looked up at him with sparkling eyes and said, "Daddy, you really are a superhero." And in that moment, for the first time since his wife had passed, Ethan truly believed it.